Hello, family. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you've decided to watch this. Something for you to consider today. Do not be afraid to ask all the questions, specifically when you're working with your doctor. What do I mean by this? Um, for years, I was in a situation where I was having like heart palpitations, blood pressure up and down, A1C up, and but my sugar level was low. So they're like, oh, your A1C is a 5, is a 6. But when you do the sugar readings, it's like down in the 80s, 90s. Um, Never in the hundreds, like literally averaging down in the 80s. And they're like, oh, you're pre diabetic. Well, every diabetic that I knew had numbers over 200, sometimes in the 300s. And I'm like, something's wrong with this picture. And they're like, oh, we're just going to give you all this medication. And I'm like, why? Now, my first thought was to just do what I'm told and keep it moving because they're the professional, they know best. However, when going in, I did not feel heard. I'm asking questions, and it seemed like the answers were just rushed. And the field that I work in, we do database decisions, right? And when I said, like, oh, I feel like this, they didn't ask me anything else. There was no qualifying questions. And I'm like, something's off with this. Um, I was asked one time, why are you frustrated? I'm like, well, when you have to decide between option number one and option number two and it's tied to finances, that can be a little stressful because you don't know the outcome. And just off of that alone, I was prescribed an anxiety medication. I'm like, you can't give an external solution to a spiritual problem. That just doesn't work. So I got in the habit of researching symptoms, researching things that I was experiencing, not so much to try to know all the answers, but to come up with questions. I'm like, what type of things should I be asking? What type of things might this be linked to? Um, and watching other videos, Dr. Oz, that try to come up with questions, stuff that I wouldn't even have known to ask. And as I'm asking questions, I'm not getting responses. I'm getting glazed over, ignored, and eventually God led me to a functional medicine specialist. And I asked the same questions that I had been asking for years. And next thing you know, it was, that's interesting. When did this happen? Like that doctor started asking me additional questions, and now I'm all of a sudden feeling heard. The questionnaire was super long. So I am telling you something for you to consider. Ask the questions. Do not be afraid to ask the questions. Do not be afraid to advocate for your own health, because the reality is nobody really lives with you but you. Your spouse, your children, your friends, your family, everybody has a choice as to whether or not they live in your presence, right? Everybody has a choice whether or not they show up and be actively present. But you do not get to choose whether or not you live in your body. You do not get a choice of whether or not you live with your thoughts. Of course, you can do some mindfulness, and know I am the only way to separate yourself from your body. You already know what that is, and no, we're not advocating for that. But you are the only person that truly lives with you. You are the only person who knows a stomach ache. You have a stomach ache before somebody else does. Only you. Other people know because you tell them. You're the only person who knows you have a migraine. Other people know because you tell them. So that means when you're having symptoms, you're the only person who can realistically track these things, write them down. I advise you to keep a journal so that when you have communication with your professionals or with your doctors, that you can ask appropriate questions, and so that you can be an advocate for your health. Family, family, something for you to consider today. Ask the questions. There's only one you. We can never replace you. There will never be another like you. There might be people who are similar to you, look like they talk like you, look like you a little bit, especially if we're relatives. but family. Ask the questions. Advocate for yourself. Advocate. And if one person doesn't answer, knock on some more doors. Because the truth is, every professional has their method of doing things, and their method may not gel well with you. Feel free to call doctor's office and ask if they're willing to do a consult before you become a patient. And what is the fee for that? You'd be surprised how many doctors do consults at no cost. Ask the questions, advocate for yourself. I love you much. Mwah. Bye.